In this special episode of the ASC podcast with John Goehle, recorded live from the New Jersey Association of Ambulatory Surgery Centers 2026 Annual Conference in Somerset, New Jersey on May 6th and 7th, 2026, we interview some of the speakers and discuss recent activities for the association and the benefits of membership in the association.
Welcome to the ASC podcast with John Goehle, the longest-running podcast specifically focused on the freestanding ambulatory surgery industry. We would like to thank our sponsors, Surgical Information Systems, providing cutting-edge information solutions for surgery providers, RFX Solutions, your all-in-one healthcare regulatory compliance software, MedServe, which is the only digital narcotic cabinet specifically designed and priced for surgery centers, helping standardize processes, compliance, eliminate paper logs, and prevent drug diversion, and Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies, the nation's leading regulatory and accreditation compliance resource for ambulatory surgery centers. For more information about our sponsors, please visit our website at ascpodcast.com.
Welcome to episode 277 of the ASC podcast with John Goehle, recorded on May 6th and 7th, 2026 from the New Jersey Association of Ambulatory Surgery Centers 2026 Annual Conference in Somerset, New Jersey, and from our studios in Spencerport, New York. I'm Sue Cronkite, your co-host and operations manager at Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies. As a reminder, the regulatory landscape for ASCs is constantly changing. The content in this episode reflects the most current information available at the time of recording. We encourage all ASCs to remain vigilant and keep up with any updates or new guidelines released by relevant regulatory authorities. Joining me today is John Goehle, owner of Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies and one of the leading experts in the ambulatory surgery field. With over 3 decades of experience, John has authored more than 10 books on the ASC industry, and he is a highly regarded speaker on topics related to regulation, accreditation, and finance management.
So we need to start off by apologizing for how long it's taken us to get this episode out. We the conference was May 6th and 7th, which was the week before ASCA.
Yep.
And, of course, our faithful listeners, of course, heard 3 special episodes from ASCA this year, and we are unfortunately unable to get this episode out until after the ASCA event. So it was recorded on May 6th and 7th, and it was recorded in Somerset, New Jersey. Sue, this is always a great conference. This is the annual conference, but the New Jersey Association is unique in that it does quarterly conferences. Most of them are relatively, shorter, and this is the big one, which went on for about 2 days. There were a lot of great speakers. I had an opportunity to do a presentation on budgeting and strategic planning, and we were able to get 2 of the other presenters to talk about their presentations, as well as one of the board members to talk about membership in the New Jersey Association. Mm-hmm. And as usual, it's also a great vendor experience. We had a booth there. Tony Lyons, who is our director of our financial division at Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies, is always there to support the organization. And we got to meet quite a number of people that were attending the conference. But let's start with a presentation from our friend Amanda Penrod. She's the CEO for RFX Solutions. She did a great presentation on leading different generations, and she's been on this podcast a couple times, but I thought this presentation was particularly timely given what's going on in the industry with massive changes really in leadership positions. So let's listen to that interview with Amanda Penrod. I'm here at the annual meeting of the New Jersey Association of Ambulatory Surgery Centers, and I'm here with my dear friend Amanda Penrod with RFX Solutions. Amanda, you've been on our podcast a number of times, but there probably are still people out there that don't know who you are, so please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Sean. Always such a pleasure to be on the podcast with you, and of course, come to the annual conferences as well. And but as John said, I'm Amanda Penrod, so CEO and founder of RFX Solutions, and we're a regulatory and compliance and credentialing platform. But prior to this, I spent about 25 years in the space, and definitely absolutely love being here and supporting it. And
our businesses, really overlap so much.
Yep.
You're on the technology side of regulatory. We're on the more that human, one-on-one with the leaders, the directors of nursing, and the administrator side. So it's always great to talk to you. We use your tool a lot, and it's a great tool. And you're here talking about something somewhat different. You're really quite a well-known speaker on the topic of leadership in ASCs, and you've talked about it on the podcast, but I don't think we can talk about it enough. So you did a presentation, a very well-attended presentation here at the association. Talk a little bit about what your topic was and what some of the key takeaways were.
John, today my topic really was on leading across different generations. And because I feel it's so important, because for the first time, we're really seeing 5 generations inside our businesses, and but predominantly 4. And really felt it was important to kind of bring this to the forefront of how we think about where we're going in the industry as a whole, because we're advancing what we're doing inside our operating rooms in terms of what kind of surgical procedures and that are happening. We're seeing cardiovascular over the last 5 years. We've seen obviously an accelerated rate of orthopedic procedures, spine, neuro, to the levels of complexity, but we're continuing to fall behind in terms of how we manage our business and how we look at that. And so I felt it was just so important to bring to the forefront from a leadership perspective what these differences are across generations, how we learn, how we process information, and how we can do this better to get ahead of what we're doing, and whether that's in how we think about succession planning, our mentoring, and just quite frankly understanding how we process information different across the generations, and how we can do a better job of it inside of our surgery centers.
There's no doubt that one of the biggest challenges we have in the industry is the aging out of our older leaders and the new generations coming in. So a good understanding of the generations and how they approach leadership differently, how they approach their jobs today differently, I think is important. So, what was your perspective, or what were you trying to get across the audience on that?
Yeah, so it's such an excellent point, and it was a lot of great conversation even in the audience today around those various topics and the challenges, even if we have like millennial leaders and trying to lead up across generations a little differently there. But a big thing for me, and in that room, there was quite a few, boomers, and then we've got the Gen Xers in the room. And I talked to them about the fact that even when we think about how we learn, and as we learned as children, as an example, paper, as we go back to information was in encyclopedias. I know it sounds silly to say that, but the amount of information at the forefront and at our fingertips, but understanding, this love for, we've had these paper processes, binders, well, it made sense. But when we really start talking about how information and knowledge is acquired, even when I kind of asked the audience, I said, when you hand a Gen Zer an example, a binder, they're like, I don't even know what to do with this. And I said, and then also in their defense, when they're very evidence-based, they want information and knowledge at their fingertips. Like they look at that and they're like, how do I get that out of there? They don't even know how. And when we think about how they learned to acquire information, they had computers and technology right in front of them since the time they were very little.
At their fingertips.
And so one of them, some other conversations, we think about EMR, and we think about even our new docs graduating school. They can just very quickly adapt, and away they go, where others are not. So just collectively as a whole, I told them, I said, so when we've had to learn from basic root memorization and comprehension differently because it's in paper form, and I'm like, but when we walk out that door, so does all that knowledge. And it walks out with us. And I said, so if with all the advancement, I said, we're going to see growth in ASCs like we've never seen before.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, more service lines, more complexity, patient selection complexity. So as this is going, we're innovating in our ORs. If we don't innovate the business and what we're doing there, how are we going to keep up from a quality, patient safety? I said, we can't. From a retention, from an organizational cultural competency, we can't. And so the biggest thing is understanding what are our challenges, and with that.
Well, and I think what you're also getting at here, probably a primary takeaway here, is that the leadership of the past. And I'm one of those, you know what I mean? We either have to learn new skills or adapt to it, or obviously look to train the next generation on the basics of the business and let them take their new way of doing things and run with it. So how are they going to do that?
Yeah, so I talked a lot today about 3 different types of models, and we think about mentoring more in the traditional sense of mentoring, and a lot of that is mentoring down because we've got a lot of experience, people are more seasoned in it, so we mentor to educate, to bring them up. But I also broached the subject of reverse mentoring, and then also some peer group learning. And I talked to them, and I used some examples, and we talked about things like EMR implementation as an example. So with that, and I'm like, it makes the most sense. Who do we typically choose to lead it? We're smaller organizations, and collectively the room's like, I would choose somebody that's more senior and seasoned and knowledgeable. And while that sounds great, we need them as part of this. At the same time, that's not how they process. That's not how they learned.
Right.
And I said, okay, so. But what about pulling a Gen Zer in? Because I know I can hand them my phone, and they can do stuff on my phone that I didn't even know that thing can do. And while they may miss some critical steps, it's like, what do we do in that process? But by way of this, we're starting to mentor across the generations. We're also demonstrating a flexibility and adaptability. And then the other things I challenge them with in this is when we think about mentorship, we also think about it as a shorter point in time. But if we're really going to continue to advance this particular aspect of the healthcare industry, what we need to be looking at as well is when I do that annual evaluation, preferably more frequently than that, but when I'm doing that, are we asking them, what do you want to do in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah.
And then thinking about how can I start plugging them in, even if it's 30-minute things every month or 15 minutes here and there. I said we think about it as something that has to be so overly formalized, but what are the other small things that we're doing to start to engage? And by way of that, we get more mentorship in terms of what we're doing.
So, as a key takeaway for our audience, first of all, when we look around our attendees today, you see a real shift, I think, toward a lot younger people. I've noticed that very dramatically this year than perhaps in the past. And I think part of that is that, obviously, a lot of the people that started the industry are moving into the retirement ages. Look at myself, at 65, it's time for me to start turning the reins over. But how do we identify the right people among the many that are out there looking for a job, and how do you've already talked about the mentoring, but I think identifying that person that's going to have those skills, are they going to come from the traditional people that we're used to, nurses coming up through the ranks, for example. We've even had in our company, we've had surgery centers that have come to us with fresh graduates coming out of college, and I got to say, they haven't necessarily been bad at the job.
I love the fact you brought this up, because that is definitely one of the things we talked about, and things that we're seeing also is, and we're hearing. I mean, we're a national company. We're working with ASCs all over the United States. We're at conferences, and we have these young nurses just out of school, 2 to 3 years, and then they're doing well in their OR management. They're doing well in other things where they're performing, and with the growth in ASCs, we're almost forced to also be looking to or moving those individuals into these roles in order to keep up with the growth. Yeah. When you're talking about identifying, I think there's a couple things. Traditionally, we also are looking for people with experience. Yeah. We're looking for people to check certain boxes. Instead, I think we need to be even innovative in that thought process. Yeah. And part of it is we need to find people who also want to do that. Yeah, and knowing that they may be afraid, and this is something I talk to the audience about, is I'm like, you may have somebody in your business office, and they don't want to say anything because they see a business office manager, they see the admin, and they see the delta of knowledge. But I said, what happens when we start asking those questions? What do you see yourself doing? And it's like, well, I would like to do it. I don't know if I can. Well, sometimes they need encouragement. Right. And I said, or to be put, again, in the right systems to help with some of the mentoring. But really, for me, it's finding people who want to be part of that impact, and those are going to be they're going to be more motivated differently versus just looking, and that more we've looked more hard skills, soft skills important, but I think clinically we were looking more hard skill. Like they did great in the things that they did from really more tactical as a nurse. They were great with soft skill physician relationships, running those OR, patient safety, but I think we have to come outside of that box and go, okay, we don't necessarily have the opportunity to know, but what other, do they have that desire, and then looking for those individuals with that interest, and then plugging them in. I can't say enough about different education, and with technology, getting them plugged into networks, things like that.
There's always been a perception that some of the best nurses that come into our industry come from the hospital first, and that could be said for a lot of nursing positions. Is that you do your internship almost with the hospitals. You spend your 5-10 years there, and then you move to wherever you want to end up being. And then there's also this perception among some people, especially in the operating rooms, that, as I'm getting older here, I want to slow down. Maybe I need to go to work in the surgery center. And we all know that never ends well. So, as we are competing with hospitals for talent, how do you see that dynamic playing out? Where do you see the role of people coming from? Should nurses even be considering going into the hospital environment in the first place today?
No.
I love it. I totally agree with you.
I can affirmatively say no. In fact, I didn't talk about it today, but I will actually be talking about this in Florida. I've talked about it at some other conferences. Yeah. And the answer is no. Yeah. What we need to be doing as an industry and thinking outside the box with this, we need to get in front of them as they're coming out of school. Yeah. Going to those job fairs, going to have discussions with them, educating them, bringing them in, and actually offering some of those interning, partnering with those programs, because at that point you're also getting nurses where they aren't in the hospital setting and they're not learning things in the way that they process and the way that those workflows, all of that's going, or having even limited, they may clinically be excelling, but are they excelling in the dynamics of what we see from how we function, a regulatory perspective, and the list goes on in the ASC environment. And we all know there's so much growth. I think we need to do better as an organization, getting in front of that and saying, you know what, we don't want you to go train at the hospital. I want to train you here in the ASC as that scrub tech, or in central sterile, or in business office. I want you to learn it here first, and really establishing those type of programs. So.
Yeah, that's fascinating. First of all, you said it so quickly. And I feel the same way, that I'm not sure. And my daughter, my wife, they all went through that normal course where they went through the hospitals first. And I think they'll be the first to say it didn't give them very good training for dealing with the ASC environment. And that's not the be-all and end-all right now. I love it. And, of course, what you just said is very controversial. But I think it's a very good point.
Well, but I look at it, too, John, even when we talk about, and I tell people this, oftentimes, we think of the ASCs, and let's just, whether it's clinical or even when we think about technology, as an example, what we traditionally see is the EMR and, in these big systems, and everybody goes hospital first, and then we always are trying to retrofit everything back down into the ASC, well said. Versus saying, you know what, our ASCs are now on the forefront of this, and we are seeing growth in the ASCs happen at exponential rates, de novos going in, service lines, and we need to change that. And as an industry, we need to change how we're thinking about it, and the best way to do it is with our people, and saying, you know what, we got to think about the industry first, not hospital first, but industry first. And whether it's technology, whether it's how we train our people, going, you know what, we can do this. And we're going to have to do it, because in the next 5 to 10 years, if we don't, we're going to find ourselves behind.
And I think so many of our listeners that are listening to this right now have had to untrain certain habits that have come from nurses come from the hospital. Will totally agree with you. So, I think I have to ask this question of every person I interview nowadays. What's AI going to do? I know you and I are going to be talking about AI at the multi-state conference in December, but tell me what your quick thoughts are here on its impact on leadership.
I have lots of thoughts.
Yeah, I know. You have to keep it short.
I will have to keep this short, because we're going to talk about it at length a little bit later this year. Yeah. What I can tell you is AI is absolutely going to be a game changer with Anthropic's move in February, with obviously the release of Claude. It is moving that industry ahead faster than we ever expected. And I share this with people. So as a company, we've been using AI in the background for like 2 years. and hugely supportive of it from a productivity standpoint, and there's very responsible ways to do that.
Right.
And here a few months ago, and so it's kind of piggybacks into the generational things and that and the topic itself. I would get on the systems, and of course for myself, I was trying to prompt it because I'm like, oh, people say, okay, I can do this for different things that I'm doing with my job, and what it would produce for me was terrible.
Yeah.
And so I had a scenario where I literally had some reverse mentoring and with one of my teammates, and he's very versed in it, and he said, look, can I teach you how to prompt this?
Yeah.
And it was like, I welcome it right now, because I was so far behind, I was bottlenecked. Well, in today's session, I actually shared this with them, and I used it as a reverse mentoring example as well, but also in being innovative and thinking about technology. I told them, and I said, so once I was learning how to prompt it, and of course I'm doing it in controlled, it's a paid subscription, I'm not out there on not paid.
Important to know.
Those things are important to know. But when he started teaching me this, so as a company, I'm expanding roles as we're growing, and what I found so fascinating, once I got it and I started understanding it, so for instance, like in my implementation team, I have different levels, like implementation 1, 2, senior, and then can go into like team leads. Well, what it allowed me to do was create this job description, and then it would create multiple ones for me, very consistent for my company, and then it would build the like competencies and what it meant to go from 1 to 2 to 3. Once I got this done, I mean, literally within an hour, that's prompting it, it's creating all this whole entire structure, I have it, and it is consistent with what I need legally and from an HR standpoint. And those things became eye-opening for me because it literally starts 10xing my productivity. And I'm like, I think from a data perspective, from a productivity perspective, used responsibly, it's going to change what we're doing. But when we talk about generations, this is where our Gen Zers and young millennials can help us push this and think about it different. And then you've got your boomers and your older millennials, as well as your Gen Xers, and it's like, okay, partnering those together, and that knowledge to go, okay, this is what we understand for the industry, but then how do we move it together? And it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of naysayers out there. You and I were having dinner one night just this last week where, somebody said, oh, it'll never replace people. And unfortunately, we know very well that the scenario that individual is showing is indeed, behind the times. I love your concept of reverse engineering or reverse mentoring. I've never heard that term before, I got to admit, but it's happening in our company. We see it with our younger people, teaching us every day things that we didn't. But you as a leader have to be open for that. You can't sit on your high horse and just say, I've been doing this a lot longer than you, and you have nothing that you can teach me. That's just so wrong.
No, when I think about leadership, John, one of the things I'm really passionate about, and we look at our own emotional intelligence, there is no other single role where we literally have the ability to impact the trajectory of the future of people's lives, the number of hours we spend in there, what we're doing. And when we think about ASCs, I mean, this is our patients, our providers, and I challenge them, even when we think about the mentoring, whether what we're using, how we're going to be innovative, we're innovating in our ORs, how are we innovating our businesses, and then if we're going to develop competent organizations, these tools need to be there. And even, I said to them, I said, when you guys go to Google, I said, you do a question now, what happens? And the room's like AI, and it answers it. And I said, right, what we're learning is we can have more information. We got to be responsible with it. Right. But we can have more information and faster. And we build, by nature of that, stronger, more knowledgeable organizations and the competence in it. But as leaders, you have to be open to those type of things. Yeah. And then understanding where we're going. And as a leader, we all are going to exit this. Yeah. And we may exit because it's retirement. We may exit. We want a new opportunity, challenge, whatever it is. What are we leaving behind, and are we advancing it to keep up pace with how the industry is advancing? What are we doing? And these tools will allow us to do a lot of those things, even though, in that conversation, no, there's things that we can't replace. It's not going to start an IV. Right. But what I do tell people is, like, what if the business as a whole was stronger? So under the hood, your business, all that paperwork, what if now you as a leader and your team, we could be doing the things that only people can do? And then let technology do what it can do. Yep. How does that change what we do every day innovatively and, through technology, automations. I mean, what other information, what evidence-based information do I have that even makes me stronger as an ASC?
Yeah.
And, but I think some of it's the fear of the unknown. I think some of it's fear of
losing your job. Or
instead of going, wait a minute, if I use this, what other things do we do to value and get back? You and I were kind of talking, and we're seeing this, and I had the opportunity to go to HIMSS here a couple months back, and the amount of AI, and the thing that impressed me the most that we're seeing come to the market is the ability to do more face-to-face interaction because they're using it and charting. And you had mentioned, when we were talking, like the vets, and they're literally on the floor playing with the animals, and they're talking into this, and then a few hours later you have the most detailed note from that visit because we can actually capture it. So but we've got to be open to it and realize that if used responsibly, there's a lot of amazing things we can do.
Well, and I truly feel that AI can take away the things that I don't want to be doing. I want to be talking to people, like to your point, I want to be talking to people. I want to be coming up with innovative ideas. I don't want to be doing a whole bunch of documentation all the time, but the AI can do that. Sounds like that's probably a pretty good place to stop.
Yeah.
As always, Amanda, it's great having you on the podcast.
Yeah, sounds wonderful. Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Next, I was able to interview Amit Gupta and John Karwalski. John's been on this podcast a couple times, and I think Amit has been on it at least once. They're both pharmacy consultants who work in multiple states, but in this case, they were talking in the state of New Jersey. Actually, their presentation could apply to virtually every other state also. Let's now listen to that interview. I'm here at the 2026 New Jersey Association of Ambulatory Surgery Centers annual conference. We're at the Palace at Somerset Park, and I'm here with two very esteemed pharmacy consultants, which I work with quite a bit. And I have to my left here, though the audience doesn't know this, is Amit Gupta, and he's with Amit Gupta Consulting, and John Karwalski, who is with JDJ Consulting. Both of them are very active in the New Jersey market as well as some other states here. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your practice.
My name is Amit Gupta. I'm a consultant pharmacist. I've been doing it for about 25 years. We work in surgery centers, nursing homes, assisted livings. What we try to do is improve our patients' lives by increasing compliance and things of that nature.
And Amit, welcome to the podcast. You're one of the few people that I interview nowadays who hasn't been on the podcast recently. So welcome. You have been in the industry, as you said, a long time, and you do a great job for our clients. And John, you and I go back a long time. You've been on the podcast a couple times and actually have spoken at a couple of our conferences. So why don't you introduce you and your practice?
Great, John. Always great to be with you. I've started JDJ Consulting 25 years ago. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary. Very excited to be able to provide guidance with medication safety, regulatory compliance, cost avoidance with medications used in surgery centers. We specialize in surgery centers and surgical hospitals in providing education and guidance to the clinical staff. And it's always great to be with you. The talk today was really Amit and I talking about hot topics in surgery center medication management, some of the regulations that we want to make sure our facilities are following on a daily basis. I opened up the talk on the DEA diversion risks, and incidentally, there was an article that came out with a surgical hospital and ASC in California fined over $3 million for deficiencies with narcotic control. And we talked about what each facility needs to have in place if a DEA agent were to walk in their front door. And then I moved on to some regulatory issues that the state of New Jersey focuses on, such as post-op pain orders by anesthesia, and finally finished with making sure that each facility's high alert lists of medications are properly managed and are in compliance with regulatory bodies.
And Amit, you took over after John. What did you speak about?
Well, what I spoke about was a focus on marijuana/THC, the increased use of it, how it's affecting our surgery centers, how policies and procedures must be developed and implemented, and changes to the staff and how they do things to help improve the patient care. In terms of, we don't want an anesthesiologist to make the wrong choice because the nurse didn't ask the right question, or the nurse wasn't aware of something, or didn't know that the person might have been on THC or one of the related products, because obviously we know everyone does THC now.
Yeah.
After that, I spoke about drug diversion, specifically more of the ways to recognize it, not just focusing on the regulatory aspect, which John looked at. He was talking about the forms. What we were looking at more of, hey, this is something that can happen, and it can happen to anyone, even people who you don't think that it would ever happen to. After that, we spoke on mannitol and mannitol crystals. Something that happens, what I like to say is, even though it is an unfortunate side effect of something that can happen, and the right way to do it, but make it more of a fun event where the staff is like, hey, this is something different, something we can do together. How to dissolve them, get the mannitol to work, I guess, properly without having to dispose of the medication with a complete waste. And then John and I had a couple pictures together where we talked about some of, hey, this is what's wrong here, hey, this is a way to avoid it, things of that nature.
Let's talk about marijuana and similar legal drugs now, because I think that's just spent some time talking about the consequences of it, the right types of questions to be asking, and what the consequences are. I as a surveyor am still shocked that it's not, I think you were the one to mention, you need to have policies with regard to it. You need to make sure that you're setting up systems to be able to ask the right questions, and make sure that your staff knows the signs, and that your patients are educated in why we're asking those questions in the first place.
One of the things I stressed with the audience today and the topic of marijuana is possibly to script the nurse's questions in pre-op assessing the patient, so that each nurse asks the same questions and gets the same types of answers, so that the anesthesia provider has a full, complete picture of what this patient's background is with these medications or these recreational drugs. And I think the other thing that we looked at was what can happen with anesthesiology sedation of someone that's on these recreational drugs, increased need of narcotics, I'm seeing in chart reviews right now, John, that the midazolam sedation is increasing from, it used to be like maybe a normal dose of like 2 milligrams intra-op to now 6 or 8 milligrams to do the same type of sedation.
Because they're built up.
Because they're built up. And, we tried to highlight these and give resources to the clinical staff and try to be consistent throughout the entire patient stay.
So it's just like how John mentioned, it's the exact same thing you do with someone who's coming there for surgery.
Yeah.
Don't drink, don't do this. When's the last time you had a drink? When they did come in? Because you don't know. Like, they could have been like, oh, no, yeah, I know, I'm not going to drink 24 hours beforehand. They come in, I just had a beer this morning. It's the same thing with marijuana. When's the last time you smoked? Well, I smoked last night. Or I'm not going to smoke 24 hours before. And then when they come in, all of a sudden, well, I kind of had a gummy this morning. And then the next thing you know, they're like, well, I didn't know gummies didn't count.
Right.
So it's those questions that, that we're trying to look for, trying to not necessarily standardize, because everyone's going to be slightly different, but make it in a way so that way it improves patient safety. And the anesthesiologists know what's going on.
Before we started, we were talking about GLP-1s, which is really kind of I'm trying to think back when it suddenly became a big issue, and I've got to say it's within the last couple of years. I don't remember talking about it at all last year. Amit, you were talking a little bit about that and some of the questions you're getting and how you respond. And again, policies are, again, very critical here.
Yes. So with the GLP-1s, they've become more popular in the past 2-3 years, I believe. Before, they were just used for diabetes, and the doctors knew, hey, stop it ahead of time. 1 week ahead of time, stop it. They would do things to compensate, whatever it may be. Now, because there's so many people using it, people who don't necessarily need it.
There's no diabetic reason for it.
Yes, they're doing it just for purely weight loss. And this isn't like the 25-year-old Instagram influencer. This is the 45-year-old, because I messed up during my colonoscopy. This is the 45-year-old who should have gone and had their colonoscopy done.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who are not listening.
Right.
So that's where the problem lies. So they've gotten a good handle with the injections.
Yeah.
It's the orals that there's some questions on, and different anesthesia bodies and different anesthesiologists have different opinions. So it's just kind of we're going to try to figure out what works and which policy do we build around it, and what does that particular center want to do.
Yeah, and John, I think, again, it's one of those things that people don't think of the consequences of it. And so I've walked into places that they literally don't have a policy on it. I mean, I think this is few and far between now. But can you talk a little bit about, those consequences and perhaps what you're hearing from the anesthesiologist when you're talking to them about the drugs?
Well, definitely, it will become the biggest prescribed medication in our history.
Yeah.
And right now, the official guidances and like John Hopkins literature and the studiers are trying to standardize for health facilities and patients going in for surgical procedures so that there's one body to control everything, but it's random now. The anesthesiologist might think differently than the surgeon. The surgeon may think differently than something else.
Yeah.
What type of procedure? We had a center that held the injectable GLP for 5 days. The patient went in for an upper endoscopy, and there was content that caused problems. So they definitely stayed with 7 days. Now the orals, as Amit said, may bring that holding time down. We're continuing to study it as consultant pharmacists. We never want to put out anything if it doesn't have backed resources and literature to support our suggestions to our clients. That's what we do with everything. When we're asked a question, myself and my pharmacist do not speak unless we have the documentation to provide. The guidance is well thought out.
Yeah, and I want to add, just from a surveyor standpoint, that this is not something that's generally going to actually be a policy. It's more likely going to be a protocol, because you need to have exceptions depending upon the patient. And also, it's not a decision that I, as a regulatory support person, or you as a pharmacist makes. It's ultimately the doctor, and there's got to be the ability to adapt to the individual circumstances. Okay, let's move on to diversion. So you heard that hesitation in my voice. I think that we talk about diversion a lot. I don't mean to minimize it, because it is big. It is a major problem. But I sometimes feel like we've talked it to death, and I don't want it to dominate the entire conversation. But can you both talk a little bit about some of the experiences you've had recently with that? Maybe some real-life examples to show how serious this is and how do you react?
Well, again, our practice is when a facility has any discrepancy with a controlled substance, the consultant pharmacist should be contacted to show that we want to guide them into the right processes. We make sure that facilities have policies on diversion control, and if a diversion occurred, action plan. So we're trying to establish consistency. You got a nursing director that is missing, fentanyl at the end of the day. We want to give that nursing director clear steps to take to avoid any future problems and contain it if it is a true problem, and correct it. So we educate staff, we educate management, we do our audits, and we try to identify trends. I just had a call before our talk right now with a missing Versed in a facility down in Washington, D.C. So I called the nursing director. We worked through the scenario. We asked about any red flags the nurses are presenting with, any behavior changes. So hands-on is really where the consultant pharmacist works best in giving the guidance so that we don't run the risk of a harm to a patient or having an impaired employee in the workplace caring for a patient. As you know, the data can say that 10 to 14% healthcare workers are opioid drug seekers.
Yeah.
We're not immune to this disease. So we even if you feel we're overemphasizing this, it's our jobs as pharmacists to make sure that we keep our patients safe by giving our clinical providers the tools they need.
Yeah, and I think that it becomes a little bit more exacerbated in the surgery center environment because in a hospital there's often more electronic controls out there. I mean,
Yes, I agree 100% with that. It's also when we do get that phone call, which 100% you should be calling your
please.
consultant.
Can I just step in for a second? You and I were talking about this beforehand. One of our biggest pet peeves is, I as a regulatory person, you as a pharmacist, is that we don't get those calls when something happens and we have to clean up after. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but...
No. I agree. It's let us know. So I'll give two quick stories. The one was a simple one at a surgery center. The anesthesiologist he wasn't sure what he did.
Yeah.
He took 2 vials of fentanyl and threw it into the sharps container. He, whatever brain fart, whatever you call it, it happens. So they called, and I'm like, listen, first thing, don't empty your sharps container to look for it. And they were like, what do you mean? I'm like, just leave it alone for now. Just don't empty it. It increases the risk of something much worse. Then there were certain questions. Did he act funny? Is he acting properly? Did he admit that, hey, this could have happened? You have to fill out an incident report, just very basic things. Of course, they then said, yeah, we emptied out the sharps container, it was in there. And I'm like, okay. So not exactly the right procedure, but we did understand what needed to be done. Then you have the opposite end, which is a recent example. It's a different healthcare arena, but what they did was there was drug diversion. They had it on camera.
Yeah.
They did not call the consultant pharmacist. They did not fill out the forms. They called the local police and said it's now the local police's fault and our job. And 100% not true. They didn't notify the local governing bodies. They didn't even notify the agency that the nurse came from.
Oh, as an agency nurse even. Oh, yeah.
But that is the entire thing. It's notify the people who are going to help you. Notify the people who are going to help keep you calm as well. You don't want to have someone come in where they rile you up, and it happens where I've seen consultant pharmacists who I work with, where they make the situation worse. Whereas, hey, keep it calm. Don't accuse this person, because that legal thing of just because, it's because I have long hair that you're accusing me. Yeah. So we have to be careful when we do all that stuff.
Let's talk about surveys and not only myself coming in as a surveyor, but you coming in and do your regular inspections. I'm going to take a different tack this time. What's the low-hanging fruit out there? What are the easiest things you see that you can fix? So that at least if you're going to get cited, you're not going to get cited for stupid stuff. I say this because I listened to the tail end of your presentation. I missed yours, John. I'm sorry. So talk a little bit about that.
So I'm sure John will agree, and he's right now thinking of a billion things. It's simplest one, tell the anesthesiologist to lock his med card.
Oh, God, yes.
Simplest thing. After that, make sure that they don't leave meds on top of the med cart pre-drawn in between cases.
And those are all things, by the way, the meds on top, especially if it's between patients, we have to call the home office as a surveyor, possible immediate jeopardy. So if that isn't enough, and you're so right, it's such a simple thing to.
Yes. I think what else? Not labeling your vials, not locking your needles and syringes in the pre-op because you're using them all the time. And yes, because that nurse is there, you think it doesn't have to be, but the second her back is turned, a surveyor can say, that's now not being observed locked.
Yeah.
Let me think, what else? Pre-spiking your IV bags, not double signing your controlled substances.
Yeah.
Those are a couple.
Those are easy.
Very, very simple things.
Yeah,
obviously expiration dates.
Don't make John and Amit find these things, right?
This is not something we want to find.
That's right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
Well, expired drugs is the simplest thing in my mind because we're checking drug dates, and it should not happen. But we have to establish how the nursing manager has set up the responsibilities to check for expired drugs each month. My motto is check every vial, every drawer, every syringe, every month. And it's not just oh, I document everything and I don't have anything that's out of date on my sheet. We have to be looking, crash cards, anesthesia cards. You know, a lot of centers will have anesthesia staff check the anesthesia cards for outdates. That's where I find most of my outdates is because, and I tell my managers, I would think what I'd recommend is your nursing staff take that responsibility because they do a better job. I've gone into a GI center, an anesthesia provider has his feet up on the chair reading the newspaper, and I said, let me check your drawer, and there's 6 outdates in there. And I leave, and the nursing director says, oh, that's their responsibility. It doesn't
And
get
they don't
done.
have time to do
And
it.
they don't have time to do it, John. We like to educate every professional when we find something to let them understand why this is a regulation that we're presenting. So the way we go about getting compliance with nurses and doctors is, especially nurses, they want to learn. And as pharmacists, we can give them the basics behind why a drug has to be given this way, or why a syringe has to be drawn up this way, or where a med is prepared in a safe environment to prevent infection control. And I love that part of my job in teaching and instructing, and not in a way that makes me look like a surveyor, but in a way that I can partner with them. And then the next time I'm out, they are approaching me with questions or thanking me with questions. So it's building a rapport with the clinical staff and letting them know we're there to help our patients be safe just as much as they are. The nurses are the patient advocates. I tell them that all the time. They're wonderful. They're assessing. The doctors have to write the orders, of course, but if without our nurses, our patients are not as well protected.
Before we started recording, I know I spoke to you, Amit, and I can't remember if I talked to you, John, about this, but malignant hypothermia, and I know, I can't remember which one. Okay, Amit, you were the one who talked about the poster. So I had a situation, one of our podcast listeners told us that they were going to start using succinylcholine, and that they went to the accreditation organization. I'm not going to mention any names here. Went to the accreditation organization and asked the accreditation organization if they could get an exception to carrying dantrolene and having a malignant hypothermia protocol. And they said, oh yeah, the accreditation organization signed off on it. I didn't believe them, so I asked them to get it in writing, thinking that that would solve the problem. And wouldn't you know, the accreditation organization sent a letter to them, email to them, saying that it was okay if, in this specific situation, they were using succinylcholine with only propofol. Now, I need to make sure, just in case anybody is listening and then turns the thing off, that is not right. I want to make it very clear that none of us support it. I went through the channels at the accreditation organization and said, this is what we've been told. The anesthesiologists all came back. Everyone said that is dangerous, immediate jeopardy situation. I, as a surveyor, would do that also. And I'm sorry, I'm throwing this at you, John, because I had a few more minutes to talk to Amit. So I'm going to let Amit talk first on this one, and then your own thoughts. Just talk in general about this, because this could be a very serious. I know it's a very small population out there, but the consequences are catastrophic.
So, of course, malignant hyperthermia does happen. There's certain agents that trigger it, one of which is succinylcholine. So when you have succinylcholine, you must have a MH cart with the correct amount of supplies.
And it doesn't matter what else you're doing, right? It's the existence of the succinylcholine.
Yes.
And any other triggering agent.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's succinylcholine or any inhaled halogenated gas.
Yeah.
So as long as it's there, you must have it. And it's just succinylcholine, not rocuronium, not propofol, not fentanyl, not Versed.
Right.
So if it's there, you must have the cart. Doesn't mean it's your primary anesthetic agent.
Right.
But as long as it's there, you must have it. Whether you never use it, you must have it. You must have it. You must have the proper supplies. You must have the proper in-servicing. You must have the proper posters. The physicians, whoever, yes, it is very rare that you would need it in, let's say, in a GI case.
Right.
Very rare, because 2 or 3 steps would need to happen. But with even that case, the fact that you may give it means you must have it.
Thanks. Sorry, John, to put you on the spot on this one, but your
No,
thoughts on this one?
100% in agreement. We all know the rules there. If a triggering agent is on site, rescue drugs, reversal drugs, any kind of drug that has a reversal. If you're using a narcotic, you have to have Narcan on the building. If you're using a benzodiazepine, which is Versed, you have to have the reversal agent, flumazenol. So, succinylcholine triggers MH. The rescue drug with equipment and contents of drugs has to be there. I have been approached by anesthesia citing a statement in an American Anesthesia Journal that said if you only have sucks, you do not need an MH cart because of the low, almost improbable. And nursing managers have come to me and said, why can't we do this? And I further respond to, that's not incorrect, that's totally incorrect. A triggering agent on site requires the rescue drugs, just as other rescue drugs are needed for other types of drug use. So another accrediting agency had written their standards where the regulation is 36 vials minimum,
Right.
or 3 of the Ryonidex, the new product. I believe I saw an accreditation agency said a center with succinylcholine can have 16 vials with a mechanism to get other vials rapidly from a maybe connected hospital.
Right.
I don't believe that is acceptable either, and I told that accredited agency I believe that's incorrect. I would not support that. People get pushed around, and anesthesia could be the pusher of like, we don't need to spend this money. It might be $3,000 for an MH card,
Right.
all in.
Plus the ongoing training and all the other
the annual
maintenance
training,
of it.
right. We have had GI centers that do not have gas as a triggering agent. They have sucks, and some anesthesia providers have elected to practice with rocuronium and eliminate succinylcholine, thus eliminating the MH cart. They have a reversal agent for the rocuronium, which is Gamadex. And what I say as a consultant pharmacist, that approval must come from the anesthesia department. We can't, that's their tools. If they're a carpenter and they need a hammer, we can't not let them have their hammer. Just as if an anesthesiologist has to practice with sucks, we can educate them as much as they want. I went to a GI center a few years ago. Succinylcholine was removed from formulary. They had rocuronium. I went into my first anesthesia procedure room. The anesthesia provider had a vial of succinylcholine sitting on the top of his cart, and he said, I bring it with me. I don't work anywhere without it.
I have run into that. So here's for our listeners. I am a sneaky surveyor sometimes. And
I am too.
Yeah, I'll go up to the anesthesiologist and say, can I take a look at your succinylcholine, knowing that it's not even on their formulary and that there's no MH card. And, I'm not going to say it happens a lot, but every once in a while, oh, yeah, sure it is. And immediate jeopardy. Yeah, immediate jeopardy. It's such a dangerous thing. So I just want to make it, again, very clear. If you have succinylcholine, even if it wasn't something you supplied to the anesthesiologist. By the way, they should not be, I'm sure you as pharmacy consultants will agree that they shouldn't be using something that's not on your formulary because you don't control that drug. You have no chain of custody on that. I always like to end our interviews with my pharmacy consultants by saying, talking a little bit about how important it is to have a pharmacy consultant. A lot of our listeners, New Jersey does require it. A lot of the states that you guys practice in requirement, but there are still states out there that don't require it on a regular basis. I'm going to bounce to you, John, this time. Talk about the important. Don't talk about your own, but talk about how important, what the role of a pharmacy consultant is, and where you can be very helpful in that, to assist that organization and things. Not just because they're required, because they're helpful too.
Well, first of all, I applaud the states that put the standards for having a consultant pharmacist on contract. Pharmacist is the only specialty in healthcare that, when a surgery center opens, is not thought of.
Yeah.
They make the nurses order the drugs, secure the drugs, document everything. And a pharmacist has gone to school to understand how to use drugs safely, how to make sure the patient is safe, and follow the regulations from state and federal regulatory bodies. We like the states to have a standard. Look, I don't think going to a facility once a year is of value to the facility, twice a year even. But when you can go quarterly or even more, now you're having the clinical staff accept you, know you, and come out to greet you because they want to learn.
Right.
And they want to make sure patients are safer.
And they're almost always going to have some types of questions for you. I mean, I think you want to. You talked about education earlier. Both of you talked about the importance of education and how that's better to have that presented by somebody that really knows that the pharmacy rules than somebody like myself who does education all the time.
And look, you just don't know what you know. I'm a pharmacist. I don't know nursing. I don't know what I don't know in nursing. Yeah. And nurses, they're great at what they're doing, but this guidance by a trained consultant pharmacist, again, we specialize in this. I've been doing it for 25 years. I'm at 25 years, and that brings the importance to the proper way we instruct our clinical team in surgery centers to utilize medications for patient safety.
Amit?
So I think a consultant pharmacist, although, like you said, it's not required in some states, and it's always something that's confused me because what we do is we're a separate professional set of eyes that comes in that doesn't have necessarily anything to do with the bank balance. We're trying to do what's right for the patient and to make sure what the nurses do what's right. And it's something John said, which is very important. It's, yes, a nurse knows how to be a nurse, but she doesn't know how to be a pharmacist. It's something as simple. Today I spoke on mannitol. People are like, oh, how did you know this? Who thought up of this? I'm like, look, it's right on the package insert. And they're like, what's the package insert? I'm like, that's the instructions for use. It's like, oh, I know what that is. But what our job is to help bridge that gap, understand what a medication is actually used for. Understand, hey, we know where the directions are. Let's help. A simplest example, a guy came from a different state. He was a surveyor of a crediting body. He told them, hey, you have you have succinylcholine. You need some Sagamidex to reverse it.
Oh, no.
He made them buy it immediately.
Yeah.
And I don't know the price. I think it's like $1,000. I hope it's not more. They bought it. And then I said, hey, why didn't you call us? Yeah. And this is something. So you're not going to be able to call someone when you're in a state that doesn't require it. So
you could have saved your fee for the next quarter.
Open up the package insert, go right to the spot. It says, do not use this to reverse succinylcholine. But that's what our jobs are. It's to help you guys, and meaning help your surgery centers achieve better outcomes without necessarily. Our job is just to save money, or our job is to make things better for your patients.
Well, and to that point too, as a surveyor, I'm often going to be asking questions. Well, what did your pharmacy consult? Did you consult your pharmacy consultant after you had this drug complication? I don't know enough about it. I'm going to want to read your report. I'm going to want to know, what recommendations you made to the organization afterwards as a result of that. And because I don't have that experience. We all rely upon experts in the field, and you guys, this is what you do day in and day out. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and look forward to hearing you again.
Thanks so much, John.
Thank you, too.
Every ASC professional knows that running a surgery center takes knowledge, skill, and a strong support network. That's why we created ASC-Central.com, a place where ASC leaders and staff can learn, connect, and grow together. ASC-Central is a comprehensive hub for education and professional development in the ambulatory surgery industry. Our leadership bootcamps, on-demand conferences, and membership programs are designed to meet the needs of administrators, nursing leaders, medical directors, business office managers, and anyone committed to excellence in outpatient surgery. Our leadership bootcamps are guided, mentored programs that help develop the next generation of ASC leaders. Whether you're new to your role or looking to refine your skills, these bootcamps provide the structure and insight you need. and many of them offer AEU credits for CASC certified administrators and IPCH credits for CAIP certified professionals, supporting your ongoing professional certification. ASC-Central's on-demand educational library gives you access to in-depth programs on compliance, quality improvement, infection control, credentialing, finance, and more. These full-length virtual conferences are designed to be both informative and engaging, not just check-the-box webinars. Many also include CASC and CAIP continuing education credits. For those who want ongoing learning and connection, ASC-Central offers flexible membership programs. The Patron membership gives you access to Zoom discussions, key conferences, and a robust resource library. The Premium Access membership adds full access to all boot camps, private consultations, staff training, exclusive content, and ongoing support from top experts in the ASC field. If you want to be part of a community dedicated to raising the bar in ambulatory surgery, visit asc-central.com or email us at info@ascpodcast.com. ASC Central, bringing ASC professionals together to learn, grow, and thrive.
And lastly, I had an opportunity to interview Jared Goehle. He's the managing partner at Ambulatory Consulting Services, and quite importantly, he is also the newest member of the board of directors of the New Jersey Association. He talked about both his company as well as his experience on the board and the advantages of being a member of the New Jersey Association. Let's listen to that interview.
So I'm here at the 2026 Annual New Jersey State Association Conference. I'm here with Jared with Ambulatory Management. Jared, you're one of the newest board member, or the newest board member of the New Jersey Association. One of the things we always try to talk about during these special episodes is, what's the benefits of membership? But first, let's start with you introducing yourself and your company.
Sure. I appreciate you considering me for the episode, so thank you.
You're the only one left around.
I figured because the lobby was pretty sparse, but I appreciate it nonetheless. So my name's Jared Goehle. I am the managing partner at Ambulatory Management. Our group works with surgery centers in New Jersey, regulatory compliance matters. We have management agreements, development agreements with centers, de novo centers. So we pretty much run the gamut as far as the services we provide to ASCs in New Jersey. The association, I was made aware of an opening that was available on the board, and I'm a vendor, so there's only one vendor member allowed, and I believe it was Christine that had mentioned it to me from Success. Suggested that I throw my hat in the ring, and I filled out the willingness to serve form, and the information that they requested, and went through those channels, and the more and more. I mean, I've been coming to these association events for a number of years, and I never really thought about running for a board seat. Or throwing my hat in the ring, so to speak. And I'm glad I did, because today's my first event as a board member, and I mean, it's great. Like I'm seeing a lot more, of actually what goes into the events, and obviously I knew from the beginning that it's not, an easy task, and it doesn't just happen, right? Like, but you actually see like what actually goes in and how hard the board works, to put these events together. It's not an easy task, and again, just being part of some of the committees and being on those calls. This is still new to me. I just found out I was elected to the position maybe 2 weeks ago. Oh wow! Maybe it was less than a month ago. Yeah.
You probably were thrown right into a whole bunch of things at the same time. You have a very active association here, a very active board.
Yeah, so I mean, the association is phenomenal. It's the only one in New Jersey. I mean, they have, I want to say, 140 members, plus or minus, and I mean, I know there's obviously more than 140 surgery centers in New Jersey. So I'm hoping that as part of the contribution that I could bring to the board is to increase our numbers. And if you look at what the association brings to the table, the fact that there are centers out there that aren't members. I mean, it blows my mind. Like, for what the association offers and the events that they put on and the content that they bring, it really is a fantastic organization. It really is.
So what are some of the biggest what do you think are the biggest benefits of membership in the association?
So I think the content. Obviously we get the legal updates from John Fanberg and Brock Eichler, which is invaluable.
And there's a lot, and the reason for that, there's a lot going on legislatively on a regulatory side here.
Correct.
If you're a listener here in New Jersey and you're not a member, you're missing out on finding out what's coming down the pike, and of course participating in helping the board to know what to fight for.
That's right. I mean, the association is they're at the forefront of what's happening in Trenton, and that's because of the agencies that they have that are associated, and again, Brock Eichler and John Fanberg are instrumental in bringing that information to us and making it easy to understand, so to speak, and regulations that they're not always the easiest thing in the world to interpret. So they make it a little bit easier to digest, so to speak. Just from a content perspective, I don't want to give you a big head, but just having you as a speaker at these events. I mean, anytime you're speaking at an event, I try to make it a point, to sit in on that session.
Thank you.
And again, I mean, I'm a vendor, so obviously I'm out in the field as well. We're in the common area with the other vendors, and the other vendors aren't attending the seminars, right? Our group is a little bit unique just because we have clients that are in there. So I want to associate myself obviously with the vendors, but I also want to go in and sit in on the sessions.
Right, and keep on top of what's going on.
Exactly.
We're in the same situation. We have clients down here just like you do. And if we're not on top of what's going on, we're going to be run over by the bus.
That's true. But again, I mean, I can't speak enough just about your organization and what you do. I mean, even your presentation today, it's and that's why I had even made the comment, during the I guess at the end was that I know you have your administrator boot camps, and I think that the amount of information that you pack into it, and again, I know obviously I also want to talk about the association here, but I don't think you could talk about the association obviously without mentioning the specific content you specifically. I think that's a big part of it.
Well, and let's talk about that for a second, because you are unique in New Jersey. I don't personally know of. I mean, I think California, Texas, and Florida, they all have ongoing programs. They're very large states, much larger than yours, and they have ongoing activities throughout the year, multiple conferences throughout the year. New Jersey, and again, you're not small, but you're not, 150 members compared to some of these other state associations who have a lot more resources. They put on sometimes not as many conferences as you do per year.
Sure.
So you're literally getting in front of your members, quarterly. They're not all big, conferences.
No, and again, they don't necessarily need to be, right?
Right.
It's the conference is as good as the content that is associated with it. And and again, I think this association, for what they bring to the table and for what it is to be a member, it's I mean, obviously it's an investment that your center is going to make, but it pays dividends. I mean, from the education that you're going to get. I mean, it's and not only that, there's obviously networking opportunities. That goes without saying, but there is a ton of information that's made aware to that centers are made aware of that. You otherwise wouldn't necessarily know about, right? I mean, maybe you'll get a letter from the Department of Health, and then it's like at least the member centers are aware. They're aware of what's happening in Trenton as it's happening. We're not finding out, months and months later. So,
I want to talk. Many of our listeners are also vendors or service the community. It always behooves us to talk a little bit about the vendor experience. I'm a vendor. We have a nice booth here. During the breaks or during the sessions, not during the breaks. The breaks are with us, but during the sessions, we have an opportunity to talk among ourselves. And just some feedback to you as a board member. I think universally the vendor experience has been really stellar this year.
That's great.
I haven't really heard anybody complain. And vendors, they're going to complain if they're not happy. And you're a vendor also. So it was good for us. I think we got to see a lot of people and the way you encourage people to spend their time in the room, the food. My God, the food here. Okay, listeners, If for no other reason, if you're a foodie and you want to come to a really good place, the Palace at Somerset Park, where they've been holding this annual conference for years, the food was spectacular. I can't imagine what their weddings are like here.
That's true.
I can't imagine the price of their weddings.
The bridal suite that we're in right now, doing this podcast. It's
but yeah, I mean, I think that's important. And again, we've said this a lot to vendors, and you know it too as another fellow member or vendor. When you're not there, people notice it.
That's the truth.
And even if you're there, they might not make a big deal about you being there, but they see your logo, they see you, mingling. They have, even if it's 2 minutes.
No, that's
that
right.
2 minutes could be a very important time.
That's right. And again, credit to the board. Since I've been a board member, which again has been a very short period of time.
That's why I chose you, actually. Though. I really think it's important to get that new perspective here. We talked to Corey Prisco has been on this podcast. She's probably one of those guests that's been on, more frequently than many others out there. And I'm sure my listeners would love to hear from her again. But I thought it would just be nice to get a new perspective.
She's a tremendous asset.
Yeah.
Corey, again, in the short time that I've been involved with the board, obviously I've been involved with the association for a number of years, but as in the short time I've been a board member, I could see how hard Corey works.
Yeah.
I know the other board members work very hard as well. I haven't had the opportunity to work as closely with them just as of yet, and I certainly look forward to the opportunity of doing that. But to go back to what you're saying as far as the vendor involvement, and I think the way they structure these events, it makes it very beneficial for a vendor. They're going to have face time, with prospective ASC decision makers, right? It's these are decision makers. These are people that are in specific positions in an ambulatory surgery center setting, and that's who you want to be in front of, right? You don't want to sell to somebody who has to sell, to 2 or 3 levels above them.
Right.
You're dealing directly with decision makers, and I think that the way they structure the event is so much that they certainly don't force the membership to mingle, so to speak, with the vendors, but it's done in such a way where the vendors have ample face time with the membership and the community. And again, I don't know what the exact number of vendors here is as well, but as membership increases, typically you'll see the vendor membership increase as well. And I think it's a great organization for vendors, obviously for surgery centers as well, but for vendors, it's target audience, decision makers, it's the place to be. Yeah,
one last thing with the vendor experience. I know Christine's out on maternity leave right now, but
congratulations to her.
Congratulations. I saw a picture of the baby. Wonderful. Again, congratulations to her. But she does a great job of keeping the vendors in touch. She has regular meetings on. I attend maybe 1 out of every 4 or 5 of those meetings where she asks them for their opinion and suggestions and things like that, and also make sure that they're engaged with the membership.
The feedback is utilized. I know that because I've made suggestions in the past. Obviously before I was a board member as a vendor, and nothing falls on deaf ears.
Right.
Anything. It is considered, and I know that's what essentially happens at board meetings. There's obviously a million things to talk about, but if the vendor community at large has an opinion or they want to see something, adjustments will be made to satisfy the community.
Well, and again, not belaboring the whole vendor experience, but let's talk about the attendee side. We come to these conferences as an attendee also to meet with the vendors. They're a great resource. There's always new technology out there. There's new products. There's new companies entering the market. And this is your opportunity to actually talk to somebody. You just, I love Zoom. I work with Zoom a lot. But there's nothing compared to getting your hands on the equipment that they demonstrate here and talking to the people that provide those services.
That's a good point.
And then just kind of lastly, we often talk. I've been doing this for 36, 37 years now. There's not many presentations that I need to watch right now.
Sure.
And again, not because I don't learn anything new. It's just that there's other things that I can be doing at that time. And it just points out how important that the time that you spend talking to other attendees here. Talking to the person sitting next to you during a presentation, talking to somebody during lunch. Those relationships can be extremely valuable, are going to be extremely valuable in your career. We can't minimize that. And there are many people, myself probably included, that would make the argument that interaction, that collegial environment that you foster here is just as important and maybe just a touch more important than the actual sessions that you attend.
I agree. I think that when you come to these events, whether you're a vendor or you're a member center, I think that the people that you connect with and the people that you meet, you never know what something is going to turn into.
Right.
You know, it's if you're a vendor looking for new business, you may go there seeking to pick up a new client, and maybe that does happen for you, but you may also leave with another business relationship that'll pay dividends for you down the road. And it's the same thing with the centers, the membership. If two DONs that don't necessarily know each other, they meet, and there's a lot of. You have two, individuals that are in the same position. I mean, obviously they're non-competing businesses,
right.
and they're able to make those connections, and now you have a resource. You have another resource in the community. Maybe it's a center that's nearby or a center that's not too far away, and you're able to have conversations with them, bounce ideas off of them, maybe share staff, whatever the case may be. It's the relationships that you make here,
right.
and then you build upon that. So the next event that the association has, it's just those relationships get stronger and stronger. So I think overall the community is fantastic.
Yeah.
And what it offers surgery centers in New Jersey, I think it's invaluable.
Absolutely. Jared, this has been great. It's great to talk to you. You and I have known each other for a couple of years, and we've spoken to different things, but congratulations on your election to the board, though. I'm not always sure that board membership is one of those things that I aspire to. It seems like a lot of work.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, right. But definitely you're in a great position here, and you're with a great organization. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
We would like to thank the Board of Directors and all the staff over at the New Jersey Association of Ambulatory Surgery Centers for their hospitality during the conference. It was a great experience, and I think, Sue, I've been attending it for at least 5 years now. I remember doing quite a bit during the pandemic when we were doing things virtually for them, and the organization has a great membership, and the conferences are all very well attended and a great opportunity to reconnect with other members. And as I mentioned during the session with Jared, one of the best things about attending a conference like this is the interaction with other members. So if you're not a member of the New Jersey Association, we encourage you to become a member and follow the link that we'll provide in our show notes. And certainly take the opportunity to attend one of their quarterly conferences throughout the year.
This episode of the ASC Podcast with John Goehle is sponsored by Surgical Information Systems, RFX Solutions, MedServ, and Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies. Surgical Information Systems provides cutting-edge information solutions for surgery providers. RFX Solutions is your all-in-one healthcare regulatory compliance software. MedServ, which offers the only digital narcotics cabinet specifically designed and priced for surgery centers, helping develop standardized processes and compliance, eliminate paper logs, and prevent drug diversion. And Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies is the nation's leading regulatory and accreditation compliance resource for ambulatory surgery centers. For more information about our sponsors, visit our website at ascpodcast.com. This podcast is an educational and operational tool and is not intended to be a comprehensive resource for all rules, regulations, and standards that an ambulatory surgery center must meet. The advice provided should not be considered as, nor does it constitute legal advice or opinion. When reviewing specific situations involving legal and regulatory issues, attorneys and other professionals should be consulted. This has been a production of Eden Group Development. All rights are reserved. If you're interested in advertising or sponsoring the ASC Podcast with John Goehle, please email us at info@ascpodcast.com. We would love to hear your questions and comments. Please email us at comments@ascpodcast.com.